All right. There was one more thing I wanted to say at the last thing, but I could tell we were running out of steam, so I figured we would put it off. I want you to think about, we're getting ready to go into Holy Week, right? I want you to think about Jerusalem during the first Holy Week, right? Crowded with pilgrims. There's news that this preacher from Galilee is coming. And then there's Palm Sunday and the crowds and the Hosanna. You got the religious leaders getting very nervous. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do. They're plotting, how do we arrest him? How do we not cause a problem with the people? You got the Romans trying to keep peace, keeping the funds flowing to Rome. There has rarely been a more chaotic place or time than Holy Week, when our Lord is going to his passion and crucifixion, eventually his resurrection. Why do I say that? For our purposes, because we experience chaos in the world, we can often think that the chaos in the world is the problem. We're going to talk about this internal versus external. But the chaos in the world isn't the problem. We'll talk about that a little bit. It is just the reality. It's just a description of what's going on in the world as the world grows in chaos. You'll notice that this is a long time ago. It wasn't like chaos was invented with the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution. This has been going on. It's just the degree to which all of us live in a world with so much chaos so close at hand. But it's nothing new. That's the one thing I wanted to say. The other thing I wanted to say is that so far we've been talking about chaos in the environment, and it's not a feeling. Okay, before I introduce this topic with you, probably you are a lot less aware of the degree to which our environment is chaotic. You feel the results of it, right? You feel the overwhelming, you feel the anxiety, you feel the stress, you feel all those things. You didn't necessarily identify the cause, right? So I want us to understand that this chaos is not a feeling, it's just a state of reality. And I wanted to say that because I know I've given you a lot of bad news. I'm going to give you worse news. Because I got to sell you on how bad this is, or else you're not going to work hard to deal with it. I want us to look at our lives, any one of us. Okay, so let's put ourselves where we like to put it. We're the center of the world. Here we are. As we define our world, thank you very much. As we define our world, what's the circle around us? Somebody said family.
Circle of influence.
And be as specific as you can with this.
Friends. Church.
And when you say church, what do you mean specifically?
Priest. Parish.
The parish. Okay.
Work. Jobs. Friends.
Okay, we've got friends, family. I know it's small, but I have to write small because they have to have bigger circles. Friends, family, parish, work. Anybody else in your immediate circle?
Neighbors.
Friends, family, parish, work. Neighbors.
God.
Neighbors. God.
For some people, pets.
That's in family. Aye. You don't put the pets with the family? Aye. Buddy. Buddy was my buddy. We just lost Buddy last year. Yeah.
Gypsy's there.
I know. There you go. Anybody else in your immediate circle?
Community.
Like? Define it.
Like outside of, like not your neighbor, but
So,
in your community.
so who's in your immediate community? It's not your friends, family, parish, work, neighbor, God. School. Okay. And we could probably come up with a few more, right? But that's pretty much our immediate circle. Okay? Facebook. Yes. Who's in the next circle?
The community.
And I want to give you a hint because we can spend a lot of time. I want you to think about all of these and who's probably attached to them, but the next layer up. Yes, Woody.
Police, government.
Which government?
And all of them. City.
Okay. So you got your city. We'll get to state later. You're going too fast.
Our home background, like our country that we came from.
Okay. So for some of us, this is where we are, but we come from someplace else, and while we're not there anymore, all of those circles of all of these same things are happening there that is also in our immediate circle. You all get that? So we live here. Some of us come from somewhere far away, but in that faraway place that we no longer live, there are friends, family, parish, work, neighbor, okay? All of which are still at work that are not, even though they're far away geographically, all of these are really still part of this inner circle.
Yes.
Everybody get that?
Yes.
Okay. So now we said around this inner circle you got a city. I'm not going to go to state yet.
Doctors,
Sorry?
hospitals, doctors.
Okay.
Homeless.
You got your healthcare people, other professionals.
Firemen, police, firemen.
Okay.
Teach, first responders.
So we'll say we got civil life. We'll just put it all together there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would friends of family be?
Friends. So you have family, and then your family has friends. That does impact you. Maybe not as directly as here, but it's not like it's distant. Right? When your family's friends have issues, great, small, happy, sad, this can come in here. It's still not as direct, but it's still part of it.
Yeah.
You get the picture?
Yep.
Okay. Your parish. What is your parish a part of?
Archdiocese.
Before that?
Diocese.
Diocese.
And archdiocese.
Okay. Don't go too fast.
Not in that next circle. And the world.
Diocese. Okay. Your work, some of your work, you work in an office. What's connected to that for some of you that's a little farther away?
Corporation.
Sorry?
Co-workers.
Co-workers are here.
The corporation.
Corporate. Alright, so there's a corporate layer. Maybe they're not in your office, but for some of you, when corporate makes a decision, all of a sudden your inner world can get really turned upside down. Okay? Anything else around there?
The people you speak to at the grocery store, the nice lady at the checkout counter, or the man at the butcher.
Okay, I'm gonna call it the public. But you all know public community, people that you talk to. Maybe you don't know them or see them regularly, maybe you do. But they interact with you, yes.
What about homeless people?
Okay, so in the public, you're encountering people of plenty and people of need. Good.
Sports activities kids are a part of.
Activities, good. Okay, now we could fill out that more. Yes, yes.
So like with social media, you have people that you don't exactly like follow, but like when stuff is like trending, like
Okay. So you got Facebook, social media here. Now you have, let's call it the next layer, right? They're not necessarily your friends, or I don't know how that works, but
Extended.
you're extended or whatever. Good. Okay, and we could add in more, right? Okay. There's another layer to all of these things. What's that layer?
The country.
Some of you said it already. We have an archdiocese. Don't get to federal yet. Your state. Okay. What else? Distant relatives? Distant relatives. Who else is in that outer circle? They're not far away, but they're not part of your inner circle. Sorry?
Sometimes in-laws.
Okay, so sometimes in-laws are here, sometimes they're here. Sometimes, well, I'll make that point in a second. We'll get there.
People who do not like Archdiocese.
Okay? Haters. All right. Now, we could spend more time on this, but I want to save some time. But I want you not to miss the point. At every layer, we still have outer layers. Okay? And we're not going to get political. Okay? I'm going to say it again. We're not going to get political because we don't want to be distracted. But there are things that happen at the global level that are affecting some of us very directly. Right? I see it's nodding. So what I want to say is there are other circles around, and we could probably have a couple other layers. And these things interact, right? What happens with the friends in your family sometimes affects your family. Right? Sometimes what happens in the activities that was out here, now all of a sudden it's coming into because it's a problem within the home. So a couple of things I want to say is you have all these things at every layer. And every layer does not stay at its place. So you can have things happening right in your life that can actually exceed far away from you, and vice versa. From the individual and personal all the way to the global. And this is our life. Right? We don't live in a world where what happens on the other side of the world doesn't affect us, sometimes very directly. Okay? And every one of these things, whether it's your civic life, your city, your family, your diocese, every level has its own set of complexities. Right? Sometimes your bishop gets taken to another diocese. Not bitter. Not bitter. All right. We're going to do a little inventory here. I'm going to pass you out a little survey. This is your personal survey. You don't need to share this, thank you, with anybody else. You can be as honest as you want to be because you're the only one that's probably going to see it, unless you wanted to share it with somebody. Instructions in the back, and you can pass it forward. There's still coming from the front. Before, don't mark anything yet. There's a box of pens. I need a pen distributor. If you need a pen, hold your hand up. Diana will come around and bring you a pen. Don't write anything yet. Don't write anything yet. Keep your hand up high if you need a pen. All right, let me explain what you're going to do. Because this is only for you to see, the worst thing you could do is try to spin your answers. You want to be as accurate as you can. You don't want to over-dramatize, because sometimes we can fall into that. You don't want to minimize. Hold your hand up high if you need a pen still. One more up here. Did everybody get their own sheet? There should be plenty. Did everybody get one? Thank you. Anybody else need a sheet? Okay. So you don't want to minimize. You don't want to over-dramatize or make it worse than it is. What's really important on this is that you think of each of these individually and take a breath in between each one. And let's just do a couple. So your daily schedule. All right, what I want you to think about is as you think about your day, as it typically is, not on your best days, not on your worst days, as it typically is, how much chaos is there in your schedule? Then you'll take a breath. You'll think about how you think about your week. Not your worst weeks, not your best weeks. On an average week, how much chaos is there in the schedule? In terms of balance, I'm going to let you define what that looks like. Is that work-life balance? Is that family, church balance? Whatever balance you want to use. And if you want to do a couple different ones, add a name and then make a circle. So 10 is very chaotic. 1 is a little chaotic. 0 is no chaos. If you get there, congratulations. And then the next section is relationship with. For those of you that are married, I want you to include your spouse on one of those. You can decide if you want to summarize your relationship with your kids, or if you want to name them individually, or your daughters or sons-in-law, or name them individually. And you can take this with you. I'm not going to collect this, so if you want to take this home and add to it later, you'll notice that in that section I've got church involvement and spiritual life. Because one of the things we're going to talk about is when we bring in chaos from the outside, sometimes it goes even to the areas where we need it the least. When we bring chaos into parish life and spiritual life. Then the next section down there is really more environment. Some of these are physical. Your bedroom, your desk, your workplace, your car. Some of them are not physical environments. Your media, your broadcast media, your online environment. And then anything else you want to add, feel free to add. We're not going to spend a ton of time now because our time is very limited. We're going to start this. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to work on it. We'll talk about it a little bit, but mostly this is for you to take with you. And then when you go home, and I'm going to give you some positive things to work on by the time we're done, you'll be able to know really where you want to focus more things on a higher priority than others. So just take a few minutes now, go through that. Any questions, raise your hand, and I will come and try to explain. Yes? Thank you. All right, Justine asked a great question. Defining chaos. We just said a little bit of chaos is not a feeling, but as you think about these things, you think about your schedule, you think about relationships, chaos, we said earlier on, was disorder, confusion, lack of being oriented, lack of being ordered, not peaceful.
Example in a family life, how that can look. Different examples.
So let's say I was choosing dinner. All right? Dinner that is chaotic is, the food's coming out whenever it comes out, and some people are grabbing it and leaving, and some people are like, I'm not eating that, I'm just going to grab something from the freezer, or I'm going to eat out. People are coming and going. No one's necessarily sitting talking to each other. That would be a chaotic dinner. A non-chaotic dinner is more or less we schedule, we're all there. It's calm, it's peaceful. We prayed, we're talking together. So order is the main sort of opposite of chaos, but there's more to it.
I think I'm struggling because I have young toddler children who just, in my opinion, are chaotic in the best way.
Okay.
But they're like where they are, there's mess around them. So I don't know if
Yes.
that necessarily means chaos, but it's just messy. Yeah, I don't. Like,
Yeah. So
that's how I'm defining
there's
chaos.
chaos in the environment, right? Then there's the chaos as we interact with it. Like there are some people I watch and they're in the middle of chaos and they look like they're just out on the peaceful sea. Right? So it's not necessarily the environment. It's not even the feeling of it. We're going to start getting into the inner reaction to it. That's why I wanted to kind of think about how we respond in these environments. Yeah.
When you say spiritual life, what does that mean? When it comes to
However you define that. So as you think of your spiritual life, that's services, that's your own prayer life, that's fasting, that's your works of mercy, whatever you define your spiritual activity to be, is it ordered? Is it peaceful? Is it calm? Is it joyful? Or is it sporadic? Is it, hit and miss? Is it disorder? Things like that. So for balance, you can pick what that. Maybe you're trying to balance different things that you do. Maybe it's parish life versus personal life. For some people, it's work life versus their spiritual life. This world has a lot of different things that we have to do some balancing in. And so it's not specifying any one of those. It's saying, how am I balancing the fact that I'm being pulled in lots of different directions?
I wonder one more question.
Yes.
So when we talk about this, are we talking about a week, a day, your
Average.
life?
Average.
Average.
Yeah. And honestly, don't overthink it, because my whole goal from this is that when you're done, if you want to work on where you want to bring more peace, order, God, where you want to go first, the ones that are more chaotic or maybe more important, you might say, that's where I'm going to focus first. So don't worry too much about exact and, yeah. Okay. We're not going to really discuss it, but I want to hear some reactions. Better than you thought, worse than you thought? Better than you thought. Good. Why better? Any ideas why you surprised yourself that actually this was better than you thought?
Broken down. Because it's broken down. This
Okay.
different section, instead of just saying my whole life, the arch is like, oh, it's really just this one aspect.
Nice.
Two aspects.
Nice. Yeah, we'll get into this a little bit. Part of what happens is sometimes we can have a fairly ordered life, but there's a part of chaos, and you're not going to stop it all. But sometimes our perception, we'll get to that in a minute, the perception can be my whole life is chaos. I have a toddler in the house, my entire life is chaos. Well, no, actually, it's just toddlers doing what toddlers do. Yeah, good. Anybody else that's better than you thought? Yeah.
I think it's because we had a really clear definition of what chaos is. And so then when you start to reflect, you realize like, oh, maybe things are busy, maybe there's a lot of things going on, but maybe they're not necessarily chaotic.
Nice. So just by examining the environment, you're already realizing like, okay, I can respond differently because I'm seeing it a little differently. Just by examining, right? We went from not thinking about the chaos of our lives to now we're thinking about it a lot. And one of the things you're saying, which I think is great, is actually it's not as chaotic because I'm thinking about where it is, where it's not. Good.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that when you break it down, you think that my life is just, oh my God, But when you look at it, you see that there are probably 2 or 3 sections of your life that are chaotic, and the rest of it is okay.
Nice. Good. Yeah.
Also too, I guess on my list, Gary, I realize that the areas that are chaotic are the ones that I have most control.
Okay. Yeah, and we're going to get into that in terms of what do we do when the source of the chaos is outside of our control. Because what we don't want to say is, well, then my life's going to be chaotic because I can't control the... Good. Yeah. Yeah, and then we'll get to you next.
I think sometimes I tend to have a very chaotic season or day and then color the rest of my thoughts with it. So if I'm like having a super chaotic situation, I might let it drag on throughout the week, and now I think my whole week was chaotic when really it was just that one situation that was rough.
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard it explained as like dunking versus drowning. Like
What is it?
dunks instead of
Ah,
drowning. 'Cause
okay.
drowning, you're dying, right? But dunking, you're coming up for air. So I think for me, it's like, I'll kind of let that color things depending on the level of chaos that was in the situation.
Nice. Pam?
She perfectly stated what I was going to say.
Look at that. Beautiful.
What did they say?
She perfectly stated what Pam wanted to say. Okay, so take that with you, and then, oh yeah, sorry.
It depends on what stage in your life. What was chaotic for me, for example, a few years ago, when I had, family and a husband and all of that. Now I live alone, and I had work, so life was chaotic. And right now I'm under one or two. There's not-
Nice.
I'm
Yeah, because you think about this. This is a snapshot. This is a moment frozen in time. But when you go through not just days, weeks, years, and then eventually decades, that's going to shift dramatically. So that's good to realize. Yeah.
Are we going to talk about the church part and the spiritual life and how chaotic it is in our life?
We will talk about it, but we'll have a chance to get specific questions. Yeah. I was saying this to people I was eating lunch with. I wish I could tell you that chaos and the results of it and the effects of it are something that affects you as lay people and not so much as clergy. I will tell you on behalf of my brothers, if we were honest, our lives, not to the world's fault, but to our own, we're not taking care of ourselves as well as we should. Most of our priests live very chaotic lives, which is why we are not there for you as much as we should be. And I apologize on behalf of my brothers. So, yeah, in other words, we're all struggling. But yeah, if we don't get to it specifically, bring it up. Anything else on this before we move forward?
I'm just gonna say, it's nice to do that, to pinpoint the areas in your life that are chaotic, because then you can ponder what
Yes.
to do about it. 'Cause
Yeah.
there are things you can do.
Yeah, because you look at this and you go, that's overwhelming, I can't do anything. But you start to bring order to disorder, and then you realize, okay, there's actually some things I could do. And we're getting to the positive soon, I promise. The bad news is almost over. Almost over. But it has to get a whole lot worse before it gets better. Yes?
I was gonna say, it's like when you get to write it down, you're writing something without emotion, without passion. So it's just a clear, like, okay, simple list. But in fact, it is chaotic when you're living it because you have passions, you have emotions. And like you can be late to liturgy and then that covers your whole day. Because you were probably speeding and things like that. So I think like taking a step back, unemotionally looking at a list, it's like, oh, it's simple, but then when I know how I feel in those moments, it's like so chaotic.
Yep. I had some great advice on this given to me years ago. Just by writing about something, when I say writing, I mean literally writing, not typing, right? Not texting, not voice texting, pen or pencil in hand, paper. Just by writing down what you're thinking about, you have to order your thoughts. And because writing takes longer than typing, you give yourself the chance to do it. So let's say you have a tough day and you're trying to figure out what's going on. Just by stopping and saying, I'm going to write about this a little bit. Just the action of writing it out gives your brain time to sort through a little bit. You're still going to see some confusion in what comes out, but just the act of writing helps you order. I mean, I had you circling numbers. That's good. It's a good start. But that writing things is one of the ways that we start to make sense out of what can seem like chaos. Yeah.
I also heard that if you use cursive writing rather than print, that the thought itself flows more coherently. So
I've heard that too, and guess what we don't teach anymore.
That's not true.
Yep. Is it coming back?
Just recently.
Nishkat Allah. Thank God. Thank God. Okay.
So, Father, just one thing.
Yes.
I want to see if I am thinking right.
Let's all listen in, please.
When I examined myself here, and I related to the anxiety and confusion and disorder, I am in the level of anxiety, but because I have a little bit trust in God, so that is make me feel more in peace in the things in my life. But I am not getting in the stage of confusion and disorder. So for me, it relieved me a little bit.
Good.
So I
Yeah.
don't know if I'm thinking right or
I
not,
think
but
so.
that's what I am feeling.
I think my guess is, and we'll see how this bears out, on the areas that you were lower, that you marked lower in chaos, you might say to yourself, like Lucy said, well, I don't have those kind of pressures like I used to. That may be the case. My guess is, and we'll see if this plays out to be true, my guess is you've actually been applying, whether you thought about it consciously or not, spiritual practices that take you from chaos to peace and love and order. But we'll see how that plays out. That's my guess. My guess is you've been doing it without even intending that's why you were doing it. And that's okay. We do it because it's good to do. Yeah. Anybody else before we move on? Okay. One more piece of very bad news. And I promise it's going to get better. Okay? And I've sort of hinted at this already, but now I'm going to lay it out directly. All of this is external chaos. There's nothing you're seeing here. Now, maybe when you put it up, you were thinking internally, but you could see all of this as external chaos. None of it, by necessity, leads to internal chaos. It just happens to be how we typically operate. We typically have an open connection, too open. Sometimes something's open in some areas more than others, where the assumption is if there's chaos around me, there is chaos within me. And that's why I wanted to start today with thinking about Jerusalem as Christ is walking step by step closer to Calvary. He's walking through a massive chaos. But does he have chaos within? No. It doesn't mean he doesn't suffer, right? We're going to see him in Gethsemane, right? Praying and sweating drops of blood. There's intensity, there's suffering, there's not chaos. All the chaos around him, right? Judas has just betrayed him. The other disciples, we're never going to leave you. All that going on, but within him there's no chaos within. So my point is that all of this is external. The problem is we often take way too much of it, and some of us will take all of this and assume because it's chaos outside of me, it is by definition chaos within me. And we don't stop to go, does it have to be like that? Whatever is chaos inside of us, think about this for a second. This is what's going on outside of us. All different layers, all interacting, coming in from far away, all kinds of stuff. How does the chaos go from being external to being internal? What do we say, whether we say it consciously or not, that allows that to be true? Any thoughts? What's that?
Overthinking.
Overthinking. Define overthinking.
Analyzing what's around you.
Okay, so I'm going to use your word, overanalyzing. Is analyzing necessarily going to bring you from external chaos to internal? No. But there is a way that we think about it, to use your word overthinking, that by definition is going to take external chaos and import it inside. Right? There's a thinking way that doesn't. There's an overthinking, obsessive, compulsive, whatever, that takes that external and brings it inside. That's one good way, yeah.
We take responsibility for some of that chaos, and we feel like we're adding to the chaos, and so we internalize it a bit.
Like what? Can you give me an example? Or
Maybe, like, for example, if there's chaos in the family, or like drama in the family, we internalize it because either we like participate in it, or we feel like we're responsible for it, or we're responsible to solve it.
Okay, great. So there's a problem going on. Let's say it's something around us, and we haven't stopped to say, how does this need to come inside? Right? Just by assuming that because it's going around me, It's now within me, right? Some people would call that having bad boundaries. We import something that really didn't have to be internal to us. It doesn't mean that we're oblivious. It just means that we know what we do have to consider and do about it, and to some degree what we don't. But to your point, if we don't process that, everything that happens around us, again, we don't think it consciously, it's happening out there, therefore it's happening in here. And it's just not the case. Right? Again, think of Jesus. He's walking to Golgotha step by step. Chaos all around him. He's aware of everything. Right? Peter, you're not going to deny me? I tell you before the cock crows 3 times. Right? So it's not that he's unaware, but he's not importing all of that and internalizing all of it. Yeah.
I'm thinking this in terms of like when you ask, we make some of these things our own, but like as far as our thoughts, we have so many different thoughts that fly through our head. Which ones kind of stick in us and become our thought or become rooted in us? And I kind of wonder if the chaos kind of works like that in a way too, like thoughts that we make our own when they're kind of floating by. Do we do that with chaos too and make it our own?
Yes.
Allow it.
By not recognizing it and by not asking myself, what am I going to do about this? We usually automatically import all of it. Right? Our Orthodox spirituality is beautiful. We understand that thoughts are going to come our way. Some of them come from ourselves. Some of them come from our perception of others. Some of them come from God. Some come from the devil. All of these things, we call them logos me. Think of them as arrows. Although an analogy I like these days, I'm not a sports person, but if you've played baseball or softball, right, somebody's throwing you pitches, you're at the plate, you're not going to swing at every pitch. You're watching the pitch, and a good batter is watching. He's watching the pitcher, he's watching the angle, he's watching the speed, and somehow in that split second, he's going to swing or not. Our fathers and mothers are telling us that's how you should treat your thoughts. But to your point, most of us go, oh, I have a thought, maybe it's out here, but now I'm going to bring it all the way inside. And then we try to deal with it later, which is, instead of saying, do I need to really swing at that pitch? We bring it in. We don't discern. By the way, I'll make this point later again, but I'll say it now. What's the one thing in our awareness? If you could think of one thing, one situation, or one person to be aware of to help you discern what of this has to come from the outside to the inside, what about? It's our spiritual life, but what specifically? Here's the question. Where is God? Where is God in this? Okay? Now, when I say where is God, I'm not imagining he's not around. I've got a problem happening overseas in my family and my in-laws. They're fighting over whatever. As soon as I go, where is God in this? What do I have before that I have at that point that I didn't have before I asked the question? Just by bringing God into my awareness, in the situation directly, what am I having now that I didn't have a minute before? Orientation. Because God is the orienting spot. Right? Now I know where up and where is down. Hope. Who said hope? The good one, yeah. Why hope?
Because like sometimes me personally, like I can even forget I'm a Christian if life is happening too rapidly, and then like you bring him in, and there's like everything goes under his feet, and you remember like some of these things don't really matter compared to salvation and bigger.
It just, the idea of having God there could take something that it could be hopeless. And then you say, where is God? God is here. God's with that person. God's with the situation. Now I'm not going down the rabbit hole of negativity. Okay, God has this. Hope is not gone. It's a beautiful one. Yeah?
Trust.
We'll go with both of them.
Trust.
Trust and?
Peace.
Peace. Beautiful. Right? And by the way, when we get done, I already told you where we're ending this. It's going to be go to pray. This is where we get it. Right? What's prayer? Prayer is saying, I'm in the middle of all this and asking that question, God, where are you? And giving him time to show us where he is so that we go from all of this. But anyway, we'll get to all the good news. When we don't do that, right? When I say that one thing is bringing God into it, then without even thinking most of the time, we're just bringing all of this outside in. And let's get political for a second. Which matters more when I am struggling about what's happening in the political, the governmental, whatever? What matters more, reality or perception? Perception. Perception is always more powerful in this realm than reality, because if we're honest, we're more interested in the perception, because that's what all this is about. In fact, if we were more realistic, we'd go, yeah, I don't like that policy, this policy, it'll all get settled out. So what's my point? My point is, one of the ways that chaos goes from exterior to interior, to going inside of us, is the fact that what is inside is my reaction to what is outside. So outside is the reality, and even worse, the perception. My perception of it is what I am, if I'm not careful, going to bring in all of it. Especially perception that doesn't ask the question, where is God in all this? So I take all of this, I add on my terrible perceptions, and then I go, I'm not asking where God is, and now it's all inside, and now I've got to figure a way to get it all out. Which is where most of us are at a lot. All right, so perceptions. Another thing we have working against us, they don't have to, but they often do.
Hey, Father?
Yes.
Pardon me.
Yeah.
That last bit, could you repeat it again? How chaos goes from perception
So,
to mechanism.
so the reality is, what is happening around me is less impactful, what's the word? Impactful, thank you, than my perceptions. My perception is what I'm going to think and act upon. I'm going to react based on my perception. And in some ways, my reaction is my perception. And because I'm reacting, which is my thoughts, my feelings, my heart, my mind, and all that, if I'm not careful and I'm not asking the question, where is God in this, I'm taking all of this objective truth, I'm coloring it with my perception, and then I'm bringing it in. Now, it doesn't mean you can't sort it out later, but I'm going to argue it's a lot easier to sort it out before you bring it in than bringing it in and then trying to sort it all out when it's already in there. Yeah.
You know, Father, I would take that a step further as well. Not only is it how we digest it and how we bring it in, but it's how we communicate it to others, because we affect each other so much. And as mothers, wives, friends, sisters, the more we get worked up about things, like I love the way you said, like there are some things that are so far out, we just like sometimes have to say, like, let's pray about it and let them sort it out, because we cannot personally handle sometimes what's happening unless we're going to go to Washington or something.
Right.
But the hype and the upset, that's why there are just certain people I'm drawn to, because they bring peace in my life, because they bring perspective. My father's the first person I think of when I say that, because he just puts things in perspective. The sun's going to come out tomorrow. It's a new day.
Yep.
But so I think we have to be very careful how we communicate with others as Christians.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, you know, there are some things I was going to say earlier and I might say later, but I'm glad you brought up, because I'm speaking to a group of women. It's important I realize that. The strength of women as they face reality is in how they do it together. How they communicate, how they relate, how they share. Sometimes on the negative side, how we gossip, how we lie, how we divide, right? But it's the primary connection is relational. Generally, I'm going to overgeneralize, forgive my sexism. All right? It's relational. With men, The primary is not relational, which is why you're so frustrated with your husbands and sometimes your fathers and your sons, because we don't function primarily relationally. We function primarily functionally. It's how do we get this thing done? How do we fix it? And you're like, stop fixing me. I just wanted to tell you my problem. I want to connect with you. And you're like, yeah, but how do... So my point is that, to your point, the fact that women are going to communicate more about walking through all this, that communication can help, right? You can lock arms with your sisters and go, okay, we're in this together. Or, if we're not being careful, it's the opposite. Right? We blow it all up, every little thing becomes a big thing, and all the rest. Right. That's a great point.
So is it because we're trained to handle and problems ourselves that we get trapped into this perception that we need to solve this problem, and then we're going to figure it out, and then when you're angry, your perceptions start being dynamically affecting others. But all my life I said, you're going to have to figure that out, and you solve the problem. And we're always trying to solve our family problems, solving our children's problems,
Yep.
So we're always supposed to be in control, and we forget God. I mean, we're trained to be a therapist, a doctor, a lawyer, and then you have to rely on that training. And then where did God, like you said, where's God? You're not asking God, can you bless this before I enter the
Right.
hospital? Where, can you bless my children? It's been forgotten.
Yeah. God, the ultimate reality of the chaotic world is there is no God. Right? I wrote God because somebody said God, so we wrote him in here. But normally, when we look at chaos, we don't see God. Why? Because as soon as you see God, order starts to break out. All of this gets ordered. If God is really there and you perceive him, you see him there, you respond to him, all of this, it might still be there, but it's not disordered. It's peaceful. There's hope. So it's when we don't recognize that God is there and working, then what's the next thing? Well, then I better take care of it.
So is the chaos there so that we find God? Or is
The chaos is there because we haven't found God.
or is God wanting us to find him?
God is always wanting us to find him. And the problem is, we live in a world that is designed for us not to find him. Nothing in the world, in this fallen world's way of being, because the fallenness by definition is part of life that is excluding the awareness of God, nothing is going to bring us closer to him necessarily. Right? But any of these things can bring us closer to him. They can take us farther from him. They're neutral. They're not positive or negative. I was talking to somebody yesterday who told me that they were dealing with cancer the third time, if you don't mind sharing. Somebody shared with me last night. And what they said was, thank God, listen to this, thank God for my cancer. Before, they told me, I went to church, but I didn't think about it much. I didn't really pay attention, and I was active. But now, God is my life. Thank God for my cancer. It's God who takes even something like cancer and says, that doesn't have to be chaotic for you. That could be your road to the kingdom.
I know one priest who always used to say, cancer is the disease that makes saints.
Right.
Yeah. Every blessing can make a saint. Every difficulty can make a saint. In other words, everything can make a saint. All of these things together aren't the problem. We'll get into that in a little bit. It's how we respond to them. Let me take one more comment and we're going to move on a little bit. Two more, but hold on. Yes.
And it can't help but resonate for me that in that humility there's that gratitude as well. And that when you have that peacefulness or gratitude from God,
that it erases a lot of the anxiety, chaos, feelings of being overwhelmed. Because that chaos is a perception of not having control.
Yes.
And anxiety is also not feeling like you have control. But in gratitude, you don't have suffering.
You might have suffering, and let me tweak your word a little bit. Tell me if you agree with this. You might have suffering, but you won't have misery. Right?
Except
Pain is suffering, but not necessarily misery. You're not miserable. Just because you're in pain, you might suffer. Are you miserable? As I define misery, it's saying I'm suffering, and that's necessarily a bad thing. Versus, okay, I'm suffering. God used this to help me bring me closer to you. That's not misery. That is gratitude. Right? And gratitude always needs an object. Right? The world, look how crazy this world is. The world will teach us to grow in gratitude, which always needs an object, right? Thank you, whoever the you is. You got to thank that person. The world says, well, be thankful to what? The universe? You need a person. And we believe in a religion that came to us in a person who we can look at, listen to, learn from, relate to, cry with, as somebody that we can also be thankful to. Even in the midst of all kinds of unimaginable suffering. Yeah. But you're right. Gratitude is the silver bullet.
Because that's like it comes hand in hand with humility.
In what sense?
Well, like just when you had written God as humility, I mean, you can't. I just feel like gratitude and humility are kind of intertwined.
Yeah. Well, everything is intertwined with humility because God is a humble God. Right? We said earlier, what does God do to knock us off our horse or get our attention? Somebody said the cross. I get the idea. The cross is the absolute opposite of what anybody would do to get attention. Right? So there's the Almighty God, the Word of the Father, the Logos of the Father from all eternity, all powerful, and being taunted by people. If you're the Son of God, take yourself down from the cross and take us down too. Right? He saved others, he can't save himself. All these things that he could do to get our attention, and he hangs silently. That's our humble God. Now, when we know him as he is, that's what will change us. It's not God in his might. It's not God in his power. That's wonderful. To face a God who humbles himself to us, that's what saves the world. But, getting back to why I brought that up, easily to get him lost. Here he is, and if, like a lot of us often do, he's in a little box. Not necessarily for you. You're all here at a Lenten retreat. God bless you. For a lot of people, God is a box. That box is called 10 to 11:30 on Sunday morning. And Father, God forbid you go to 11:35. And you think I'm kidding. Right? The watches come out. Because God is seeping out of the box. We don't want him outside the box. But, as we're going to end up, I've already told you where we're going, if our awareness from God it'd be great if it was constant, but at least if it was regular, then all of this, we see it very differently. All right, quick comment, then we're going to go on.
Is it, okay, so like coming former Protestant, low church, this is high church. So sometimes when I think about God, it's a part of the chaos, but the fact that like I'm constantly like I'm failing him because I'm not showing up to as many services. I'm distracted in liturgy, or so it's like a different type of hopelessness that even when he's in mine, is in a way of like I'm messing up. I didn't do my prayer. I didn't do the prostrate. I didn't. How do you reorient?
There are parts of non-Orthodox traditions that were built upon a negative perception, if not of Jesus, at least of the Father. In some of those traditions, Jesus is the good guy, and he's trying to cover up for his Father, because his Father, excuse me for saying this in church, his Father's really pissed. He's pissed off at this world. He's pissed off with you and me. God forgive me. But that's how a lot of people are taught to think. There are people within Orthodoxy, not by the Orthodox Christian faith, who, because it's easier, can, intentionally or not, often speak in those kinds of terms where if you don't come and do what God wants you to do, something's wrong with you. Okay? I've even fallen guilty of that. It's really hard, let me tell you, as a priest, it's hard not to become what I call the used car salesman. I get up at the pulpit, and it's Holy Week is 2 weeks away, and I'm selling Holy Monday like it's a 2015 Oldsmobile. It's great! I know you don't normally show up until Holy Wednesday, but let me show you what I have for you. Right? One of my... broke my heart my first year in the parish in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Holy Saturday has always been my favorite service of the year. We shouldn't have a favorite service, but we all do. All right? I get there, and we have Holy Saturday. There's like 23 people. It's a big parish, right? Our church seats 500 people. There's 23 people there. And I'm heartbroken. So what do I do with the best of intentions? I go into next year, used car salesman. Oh, you got to show up. There's bay leaves and there's purple and white. And as much as my intentions are good, that's not how our God deals with us. He doesn't give us a song and dance. Some of you remember Cal Worthington. Remember Cal Worthington? And his dog Spot selling his used cars. Right?
How many did you get the next year?
I am so happy to tell you, we have a light Sunday crowd on Holy Saturday. It's getting better. But my methodology was always good. We have a God who says to us, that's not going to work. Trying to sell people, trying to guilt people, trying to give them a negative, to go back to your original question. We're not going to scare people into a life of faith in God, which is why our God comes to us. And this is where there's a very distinct difference between how we understand the crucifixion from every other church body, right? Every other church body, all the other churches, Christian churches, talk about Jesus' death as paying for our sins. And so even though he is the sacrifice, and everybody, all the Christians see him as a sacrifice, they see it as this powerful act where God and his divine person, the Son of God, is going to pay for, because he's God and he can write big checks, he's going to pay for all the sins of all the world from beginning to end of time. We see a God who chooses to come and suffer and to offer himself because somebody needs to break death open from the inside, and he's the only one that can do it. And so he comes and he does it by actually suffering, actually dying. He also does it in such a way that if any of us are listening, we'd never again say, God, whatever you're asking me for, that's really for you, not for me. Right? Like whether it's coming to church or paying your tithe or whatever, we are so tempted to think God wants something from us. Right? We're supposed to pray. Well, God wants our time. None of what he is asking of us is for us. Nothing. There's nothing God needs. There's nothing we can add to his life. Everything he does is for us. And yet, think about the last time you felt guilty for something you didn't do. The guilt says, God wanted this from me and I didn't give it to him. So even us, even lifelong Orthodox, we still struggle with a wrong idea about God. That somehow we have some kind of deal. He's going to give us certain things. We're going to give certain things. It's all about us. So, and the only way to correct that, to get back to your original question, is to see the God as he is, and he never speaks to us more clearly than he does from the cross. And it was all for us. All right, we're going to move on, because we've got a lot of things. We got a lot of good news. We got to some good news, which I'm happy about, but some things I don't want to miss here. All right, we talked about perception. We've talked about reactions, bringing that all in. The one more thing I'll say about this, God designed us. He designed us body, mind, soul, spirit. Every one of those things has an ordered way of being and a disordered way of being. Okay, we can be ordered physically, we can be disordered physically, be ordered emotionally, disordered emotionally, in all of our dimensions. Part of what's going on, and this I would call a modern problem, this is not a last 150 years, this is the last 30 years problem, and getting worse by the day. And you can see how this works when you see about commercials. According to the world's wisdom, not God's wisdom, the world's wisdom, what is the most authentic dimension of ourselves? What's the most real thing we have? Our feelings. Our feelings. We live in a world that is telling us your feelings are the most authentic part of who you are. So if you feel a certain way, you need to honor the feeling. You need to obey the feeling. Right? Listen to the feeling. The problem is, of all of our dimensions, physical, spiritual, the emotional dimension is the most unreliable of our component of our makeup. And then to bring it back to our main point, we're going to react emotionally to all of this, and to some of it together, and some of it in combination, and sometimes to the whole thing. And then in a world like we live in now, which is a very new phenomenon, where we are being taught to prioritize the feelings above everything else, we can, if we're not careful, become obedient to our feelings about all of this. And our feelings are often going to take us in the opposite direction of where we need to be. All right, we're almost done with Lent. Lent has a lot of goals. There's a lot of things that we look at what we do in Lent. The main thing I would suggest to you, that the main thing we do in Lent is to teach ourselves that we can feel one thing and do a different thing. You can feel like you want the cheeseburger, right? I live in Michigan. There are no Tommies in Michigan. I saw the signs off the highway. I can feel like I want the Tommies, but I can go, yeah, I don't need the Tommies. So whether it's the fasting, whether it's the increased prayers, the services, everything the church, which by the way, in and of themselves, are all good things for us. But the idea is not, hey, do some really good things for a while, then go back to regular life. And I'll tell you where this typically happens for us. And hopefully we can all do better this year. If the church is teaching us during Lent, you can act one way, you can feel one way and act a different way. Where do we normally give up that idea following the dismissal on Pascha night? In the breakfast. We haven't even gone home. And after all of that struggle, I can feel one way, I can act another. Now, if you're better than me, and you can go, isn't it lovely? The table is richly laid, and I can have a little bit of this, a little bit. And thank God I don't eat it anymore. God bless you, because that's what we should be. Most of us go, yes. Right? And we undo all the progress we spent 6 whole weeks trying to figure out, no, I don't need that stuff anymore. The church says, here it is. Enjoy it. Enjoy it freely. Don't get addicted to it again. And most of us, by the time we're at Bright Tuesday, we're sick to our stomachs. So, what's my point? My point is that our emotions, these days more dangerous than previous times, can lead us astray and can lead us to be even more chaotic about the chaos. Because our emotions are not, as pure emotions, they're not filtered. And they shouldn't be, by the way. All right? We have some psychologists in the room. It's not a healthy thing, psychologically or spiritually, to stifle your feelings or to ignore your feelings. But I think from both perspectives, we'd say, But you know what? They're really good information. You're feeling something? Say to yourself, feeling this thing. Wonder what that's, why am I feeling that? Wonder where that's coming from. Wonder what's going on. And emotionally and spiritually, it's a good thing to go, I got some good information. I don't want to ignore it. I don't want to stuff it away. I don't want to repress it. I want to examine it. And then decide what I'm going to do about it. Not just throw it into the rest of the mix. Okay, anything on any of that? Let's see where we are. All right, we're going to take a little break. Any questions on this before we take a little break? Yeah.
What do you think about the idea that, yes, identify the feeling, and then, yes, try to understand it and so on, but also offer it to God. Lord, here it is. Help me deal with it. Teach me what to do. Or, bring God in our healing in that way. But
Absolutely. Every piece of information you can take in after you've asked the question, where is God in this, is going to be good information that you actually respond well to. If you say, what's this about? Well, it's better to examine it than to be a victim of it, right? To let it drive you into all of this and have you double and triple on your chaos. Examining it, so it's not going to control you, and then asking that question, where is God in this? Now you know what to do with it. You need to act on it. You need to let it go. It's not your issue. It's somebody else's issue. It's for God to deal with. It's not for you. Or, you know what? Here's where God is in this, and because of this, here's some things I need to do. I need to do X, Y, but not Z. That's always going to be the answer is, where is God in all? That's the question that's going to bring us to the life we're talking about.
I think what you're saying is that we have no control over the thoughts and feelings, but we do over the behavior.
Correct. Well, and I would even say before the behavior, your response to the thought. A lot of us have a thought and we immediately feel like it's my thought. That would be like saying, I'm going to swing at every pitch. A thought comes, I examine it, and I either go, that's a good thought for me to take in, respond to, internalize, or it could be that's a thought that I want to act on, or it could be a thought, you know what, that's not really something I think is helpful, true, right, godly. Let it go. For a lot of us, we don't stop to realize that between the awareness of the thought and the action, there's an intermediate step. And that's, what am I going to do about this? And a lot of people deal with a lot of guilt because of the thoughts that come. And the Fathers are very clear. The thoughts that come to you, until you start to engage them, no guilt. They could be really awful thoughts. It's okay. You know what? No, I don't want to think about that. That's not really anything helpful, good, true. No guilt needed because you didn't engage it.
And what you're describing is bringing the unconscious into the conscious.
Yes. Because ultimately, conscious, which I'll define as the awareness of the truth, is God. And we live in a world where our God created this world to be a constant reflection of Him. And yet, just so the tragedy, why do we talk about so much bad news so far? This is the world designed.
We didn't hear you.
We live in a world
Created to, what did I say? To reflect the absence of God. Okay, so the world in its chaotic, not its nature, its fallen nature, its non-godly nature, is a world that makes it difficult. It wants to make it impossible to find God. That's the world of chaos. It's a world that says, why is it chaotic? Because there's no God in it. But you bring God in, and all of a sudden, that awareness of God brings order, peace, stability, quiet, hope, all those great things of God. Yes?
I'm sorry, but I feel that we're going in circles about the same thing. We need to bring God in, we need to bring God in.
Yes.
Okay, let's say we want
That's-
to bring God in, but we don't know how.
We're going to spend the next hour talking about that. So, good teaser trailer. Can we do a 7-minute break? 7-minute break.